Okay, everybody, so welcome back to another intro to TouchDesigner tutorial. So if you've been watching these tutorials, you've come here to learn some of the fundamentals, some of the kind of basic beginner things of TouchDesigner that will then allow you to do much more complex and advanced programming and design and digital content creation. Today, I want to look at this little program that I built here, which will allow you to change the color manually. So we're going to be working on building some UI. And then also, if we hit this little auto button, we'll change the color automatically. Okay, so let me minimize that. We're going to be building a couple networks. So if I go in here, as you can see, we're going to build in a couple networks. We're going to build a UI network, which has some sliders and a button, and then also has these automatic values that are going to be sent for color. Okay, and then if we go over here, we also have this network for color. Okay, very simple network. So let's get ready to get started. And we're going to jump into our first thing, which is starting a brand new project. Okay, so first thing I want you to do is go ahead and open up TouchDesigner. When you open up TouchDesigner, you're going to see this kind of basic group of nodes, right? First thing we want to do, let's save this. We're going to save, and I'm just going to put it on the desktop for now, and I'm going to call this color switcher. Can't spell it. Color switcher demo. Let's try that again. Color switcher demo. Okay. And I've already done that, so I'm going to call it color switcher demo 1. Okay, so first thing we need to do is delete all of the existing nodes that we have here. So we're going to take all of these out. Don't need them. Then we're going to go up a level. So if you take your middle mouse wheel and zoom out, that allows you to go inside and outside of nodes. Okay? So if you're inside of a node, okay, or kind of like inside of a bunch of different projects, or inside of a container, basically all these nodes are groups, all these containers are groups of nodes. So we use our middle mouse button to go in and out. Now, one of the things is TouchDesigner is pretty difficult to use without a middle mouse, without a middle mouse, but really without a middle mouse button, but without a mouse that has a scrollable middle mouse wheel. Kind of like digital content creations kind of all rely on similar mice. So it's probably in your best interest to get one, and for most of these tutorials, unless I do something specifically, I will be referencing a normal mouse and a middle mouse click. Okay, so now, not to get too far away. So what we want to do, right, let me undo. So we had all of these nodes. This is exactly what you see when you first start, okay? And we're going to delete. And then we're going to scroll out so that we can see the container that our project is contained in. Okay? Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the layout page of our project container. And we want to change the width and the height of the layout. So what we're going to do for this is use kind of what our screen output would be. So 1920 by 1080. Okay. Then the other little selection that we need to do is go into our children. All right, and so basically what the children page says is that any containers that we create inside of this, we can do some group alignments for all of the containers, which it kind of just makes it easier to place on the canvas. So we're going to align from left to right and then make sure that the justified method is on group. Okay, now what we're gonna do is go inside of this project. Now you can just double click to go inside. Okay, and what we're going to do here is create two containers. So in order to do that, we're going to bring up our operator box, which we either use tab or double click. So we use tab and go into our comps. If you look under panels, you'll see container, and we're going to add our first container. Now, as you can see, we're pretty zoomed out, so I'm going to put this close to the home. There we go. Now, what happened there is I just hit H. If you hit H, while moving around the network, it'll center it, make your boxes visible on the screen if you're too zoomed out, so you can kind of just navigate through TouchDesigner a little bit better. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to call this container UI. Okay. Now we're going to create another container. Okay, place this a little further over, and we're going to call this container colors. Okay, so now we have two boxes, a UI box and a containers box. So let's go into the UI box. Now, a couple things we can do in the UI box. And first, I want to come out. We want to adjust a couple of the parameters of this container. So like the width, the height, things like that. So the first thing we want to do is create a width for this. So I think 640 is a good width. And the height should be the height of the canvas, which is 1080. Okay. But I want to show you another way to input the height in case we need to change the height of the canvas. We're working on different outputs, a variety of things. Now, the way I'm going to do this is we're going to use some Python code that's going to reference the height of the parent object. So the parent container of this is the project container, right? So inside of the project container, we have two containers, essentially. So what we want to do with this is reference the parent, and then which is named project. So parent.project, and then PAR, which you're going to use a lot, which means look at the parameters, right? So these are each one of these lines is a parameter of the container. And so we're looking at the parameter of the parent container, and then we want to take the height, which in this case is referenced as H. So as you can see, we typed in parent.project.par.h or par.h, and it gives us a value of 1080. What I like about TouchDesigner is the value here, right? It's going to give you a numerical value here, and then if you click this plus sign, and they only are visible when you hover over a specific line, but you'll see the line illuminate a bit. And if you hover over it and hit the plus, you can input Python expressions. Okay, so now we have the height, and it's linked to the height of its parent, which is the project container. And if we look at the project container, again, we can change the height. What I would do first is let's add the, let's finish doing a couple more things here. So we're gonna go to the UI, and there's one more thing, a couple more things we need to check. We need to make sure that the parent alignment is on allow. So it's gonna allow these to be aligned based on some parameters. And then also we want the align order for this to be 0. Then we're gonna go over to the look panel, and we're gonna just change the background color to 0.2, and then change the background alpha, which is the amount of color that we're letting through, to 1. Okay? So we should have a gray box and a black box. And if we zoom out, now you can already see that our canvas is starting to take shape. We have this left side gray box, and then we have this right side black box, but we're still not done. So let's go back into our project, and let's do a couple more things. So let's go to the colors parameters, and we're gonna go to layout, and we're gonna do 1280, but for the width, right? And again, we can reference our Python expression here in our UI box. So we can either copy this, copy the parameter, and just paste it in. So if we paste the reference, and as you can see, as soon as we paste the reference, this little connection thing comes up saying that there's some information being fed into information here. Now, we can do it that way, or we could do it the way we did before, which is parent.project. So same thing. Now, if you notice, we're using a Python expression, but this one is referencing the parent node. The other one was referencing the other child node. But just different ways to do the same thing, or we could just type the number in. Now, the other thing that we can do is look at the width and height, and also make this a expression so that if we change the dimensions of our screen, we are automatically changing the dimensions. So the way that we could do that here is we are going to go to width, and we're going to type in parent.project.par.w, which is the width of the parent. So that's the width of the full container. And then we can subtract the width of the UI container. And the expression that we would use to write that would be OP. So we want to reference the operator, the UI operator. Then we're going to have to give it the title. So what's the title? What did we call it? We called it UI. And then what? We need to get the parameter and then the width. And we should get the same thing. The width is set and the height is set, and it's dependent on the width, the total width and height of your canvas. So the other thing we need to do here is go to our parent alignment box, make sure it's on, and we're going to just change our alignment order to 1, which means that this one is considered second in the order. So if we're going to order them as children, this would be 1, this would be 2, or in TouchDesigner's case, this would be 0, this would be 1. Okay? A way to check this is we're going to go out to our project, and now you can see that the alignments are all dependent upon this. And if we move it, you can see the width getting smaller. Okay, so the width and height, we can kind of justify our canvas as we see fit. So I'm going to put those back. Okay. So now we have our UI set, our container, and we have our colors container set. Okay? Okay, so now we have our two containers, UI and colors. So now we need to do a little more setup and start adding some of the operators inside of these containers. Okay? So what we're gonna do, and a couple other shortcuts, and I'm gonna just drop in some shortcuts that we use as we go through to not overload you, but to kind of help you navigate a little faster. So if you hit I, you will go inside of the container, and if you hit U, so inside and up, think about it, it should be I and O. I don't know why I didn't do O, but I and U. Inside will take you, I will take you inside, U will take you up. So if you need to go through multiple networks, it's a quick way to get there. Okay. So we have the UI selected, the UI container. We're gonna go inside of, we're gonna stay there. And let's go over to our parameters window. So the other thing is, if you don't see this window over here, all right, just hit P and the window will come up. So let's go to the children tab or children page for UI. And what we want to do is we want to align this top to bottom. Okay, we're going to add in a spacing of 5. We want the justify method to be group. We want a center justify, and we want a horizontal justify of center and a justify vertical of center. Which that means is that basically as we add more elements or add more operators to the network, that the placement or the positioning will come from the center and then move equidistant to as we add more. So we'll keep a nice kind of alignment as we add the components inside. Okay, so now we're gonna go inside. So we hit I, we're inside of this. Okay, we're gonna add our first component to the network. And actually what I wanted to do is, let me go up a level. I want to show you, so let's view this. And we're gonna make this small because I wanna show you how the elements actually appear as we add them. So, and I'm sure you're like, how did you just do that? So if you right click your UI and we hit view, we can actually just view this container as is. Another reason why I like working with containers. So we can just view this container, kind of get it situated, and see how it's working. We can also interact with it, which is nice. So we have our container up. We want to go back inside, and we are going to add our first slider comp. So we go over here to panels, and if you look underneath panels, you can see slider. So TouchDesigner's already made us an interface, kind of some base user interface. And if you look at this over here, a slider has appeared in our container. And if I can move it, so I can already interact with it. So essentially we're done. We've built it, it's good, right? No, we could get a lot better. So first thing I want you to do is go to the slider page. Make sure slider's selected, and we're gonna type in red. You can type in caps, I like caps. You can kind of choose what you want to do. Now, quick thing, let's go inside of this. So we're gonna go inside again, and now you can see how the slider is made, right? So all the components that make up the slider. There's a parameter component, which is then fed out to an out component. Okay, we're not worried about that. I want you to select the text operator and then go to the font page. Once you're at the font page, I want you to go to scale text to fit. Make sure it's always. Okay, and we're going to go down here to horizontal align and make sure it's center. Let me turn my camera off for 1 second so you can see that again. So if you go here, down here, we're at horizontal align and we want it on center. Okay? Let's go up a level with it selected. So now you can see that we have it as red and it's now in the middle of the slider, the text. If you want to check the slider right inside of the TouchDesigner network, we can just go here to this viewer active button. And again, we can change the position of the slider. Okay? So now that we've done that, the other thing we're going to do here is we're going to go and change the color to red. So we have a red slider. And then we are going to make the layout or the width 200 and the height 50. Okay? And you want to make sure that the parent alignment is on and the align order is 0. The next thing we're going to do is add 2 more sliders, because we need 2 more sliders to be able to have red, green, and blue. So what we want to do here is we can simply, with it selected, just copy, paste twice. So now we have 3 red sliders. So first thing we're going to do is go to the slider label. Let's call this green. And let's change the color. Let's do this one. Oops. Okay. And then the same thing for slider 3. And we're going to go to slider and change the color to blue. We're going to go back to the green slider and we're going to change the align order to 1. Okay. And then, so as you can see already, because we changed the align order to 1, it aligned these 2 first, so it'll group them in order. So because I kept red in red in align 0 and then green in align 1, it moved it to the 2nd position. But as soon as we change blue, so we're going to change this label to blue and go to the layout and make this align order 2. Now you can see they're all in order. So a very easy way to start to align your items without having to move around and use X and Y positions. Is kind of just a very easy way to align stuff, and you can change groupings and individual components within your container. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we're gonna go and add add 1 more UI piece, which is a button. Okay, so I got this button here now, and again, let's call this auto. All right, let's make it purple. Make a purple button. Okay, and then we are going to change the alignment order to 3. All right, so we have, if you look at each one, This is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. The only other difference is we're going to change the height to 50. And then we are going to add nulls to each one of these. So a quick way to add a null is you can either middle mouse click and hit null. All right, so that's gonna just basically output whatever the value, wherever the slider is placed, the value that's being output by its placement. Okay, so now we're gonna just continue adding nulls. We're gonna add 2 more nulls. Okay. Now that we have our nulls, what we're gonna do here is add a merge. And what a merge is gonna do is allow us to take all of this information and bring it back in to one operator. So we're taking all of this information and we can use this information in other places, other locations, but it's coming back into one operator and it's a little easier to manipulate and maneuver. Okay, so we've added a merge chop to our network. The next thing we need to do is add a rename chop because we want to name these so that we can kind of keep track of things. So what a rename chop allows us to do is take these channels, which have been given these names V1, V2, V3, V4 in our merge, and we're going to name them to things we can use and things we can remember. So the way to do this is we want to take all the channels, which is essentially, you can use the asterisk, which is all, or we can select them, each one. So we could do V1, and then if I selected V2, it's going to put it there, or V3, V4, it's going to put all the channels in there. And essentially, I could also type it. So V1, V2, V3, V4. If I only wanted 3 of them to rename, then it would look at that. Okay, and the spacing is important because each space represents a different item. So now what I want to do is I want to change the first 3 to say slider, then I'm going to put an underscore, then I'm going to use square brackets, and I'm going to type RGB. And square brackets. Now what that's going to do is it's going to take the first 3 channels, V1, V2, V3, and rename them slider underscore. Whatever is inside of your square brackets will then be assigned line by line to each one. So you're going to get slider underscore R, slider underscore G, slider underscore B. And then for V4, if we hit space, okay, so TouchDesigner is treating each one of these as a separate channel. So that's 1, 2, 3, space bar. And then we can change V4 to something. So we're going to call that button. If we hit enter. And as you can see here, now in our null, or in our rename chop, we have slider R, slider G, slider B, and a button. Okay? So let's look at this button real quick. So the button, if we turn the viewer active, the button will send a value of 1 when selected and send a value of 0 when deselected. And there's a couple parameters that we can change that probably not going to for this exercise, but I just want to show you real quick. So if you had a momentary, right, it would only be for when the button is pressed. Okay, so you'd have to hold the mouse to do it. But for this one, let's just use toggle down. Okay, so if you hit it, toggle, it's going to turn it on, turn it off. All right, so we have our rename. Now, we're going to add 2 select chops. Okay? So the select chop is going to allow us to then select certain channels from our chop operator. So let's say for this one, we only want the RGB. So we're going to select this chop, and we're going to take channel names. And for this, we just want to take slider R, slider G, slider B. So it's just not taking the button information, and pretty intuitively here, we're just going to take the button information. Okay? So now we've essentially just kind of split this information off, but everything's renamed and organized. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is add a null chop just to close the network here. And we're going to add a null chop to close the network here. We're going to call this auto button. And we're going to call this slider underscore RGB. So now we have two nulls coming off of all of the UI that we made for our project. Okay, so now we've got the inside of our UI fixed, and we've connected our button. Now, if you're looking at the interface though, and you're like me, you're like, these buttons are too small. What's the fix? How can we do it? Now, we could adjust the width and height of each one, but that's going to take too long. So one of the things we can do is we're going to go up a level. Let's go inside again. So we're going to go up a level. And if you go here to your children page on UI, we're going to go to fit, and we're going to go to fit best. Okay, now as you can see, our UI now fits. Okay, now one of the other things we could do is quickly fix our button. If you remember before, oops, let me jump around here. So let's go to our button. We're going to go inside our button. And one thing we need to fix is our scale text to fit. Make sure that's on always. And we can go out. And now we have a big auto button. We have a red, we have a green, and a blue. Okay, so let's go back inside of our UI. Now, we've built our user interface. So we've got the user controls. They all work. Great. But we still need a couple more things. So, what if we want to do this automatically? All right, so we're going to now add an LFO chop. So an LFO chop basically will create, and I'm going to hit play here. So if you start the LFO and nothing's happening, just make sure your playhead is running. So the LFO is going to be slicing time, okay, and creating a wave. And if I add a trail chop, you can kind of see graphically what the wave is. But I'm essentially generating a wave, or generating values between -1 to 1. Okay? Now, if you know anything about trigonometry or sound, this is a sine wave. It's a very smooth wave that goes from 0 to 1 in a very fluid motion. For what we want, however, is we want to generate these values from 0 to 1. Okay, so rather than going -1 to 1 and then having to use math chops, we can just simply go 0 to 1. I'm going to turn the frequency down here. Okay. And I can essentially just create an alt chop here. All right, and I am going to just copy these twice. All right, so this now I have 3 LFOs that are going from 0 to 1. So they're generating values that I can use from 0 to 1. And I'm going to call this red. Let's call it auto. So auto red, auto green, and you know the final one, auto blue. Okay, so now essentially what we were doing with our sliders, if you look up here, right? If we go to our nulls here for our sliders, we're generating this value from 0 to 1. And we're doing the same exact thing here automatically, just using LFOs. Okay, so same thing that we did up top. We're going to take this information and pull it all back in to one chop. Okay, so we're going to merge all of this information back in. Okay, then we're going to add a rename chop. And we're taking all of this and calling it auto underscore square brackets RGB. So now I have automatic color values between 0 and 1 that are moving at different frequencies and being generated. So the next thing we need to do is add an alt chop. So this is, again, we're just closing our network. We'll call this auto RGB. All right, so these are the values. And as you can see, I'm building 2 parallel networks here. So in order to keep this a bit more organized, what I want to do is I'm going to right click and I want to add a network box. And what a network box allows me to do is kind of group these operators and keep them organized. So this one I'm going to call UI and we're going to leave it. And as you can see, when I added the network box, this color palette came up, which allows me to change the colors of it, which is nice to keep it organized. We're going to just make it this dark right here. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this. So let's add another network box. And we're going to make this one green. And let's zoom in a little bit. And we're going to call this auto. I cannot spell today. Auto RGB. All right, so now we have 2 networks. What's nice about this is if I want to move the networks, it's going to automatically select all the nodes and move them around. So just get in the habit of making network boxes. It's going to make your life a lot easier, especially when you're, when you have projects with 100, 200. They can get so expansive. You have so many nodes and networks. So just really try to get in the habit of keeping everything organized. Okay? Now, the final thing that we need to do for all of this to work is a switch. We need a switch. We need to be able to tell TouchDesigner when to go from automatic to manual. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a switch chop. Okay, we're going to go up here and we have our switch chop. Let's zoom in a little bit. So the first thing that we want to do is we want the switch, when we selecting our auto, okay, we want our switch to go to index 1. So this button, right, that we've created here, this automatic button, we want to be able to change the index of this switch. It's very easy to do, and this is why we created the null. So we're going to select our viewer active, and we're just going to drag and drop it onto the index and paste the chop reference. Okay, so now, as you can see, the reference is there, but nothing's happening. And you're like, why is nothing happening? Well, because we haven't connected anything to our inputs. So we're going to take our slider RGB null, and that's going into input 1. And then we are going to take our auto RGB values, and that's going into input 2. Now, when we hit our button, as you can see, the switch is either generating automatic values, or it's going to go back to our original color values. Okay? So again, I'm going to hit auto, and I'm sending out these values. If I hit stop, it's going to go back to where I left it. Okay? So auto, stop, auto, stop. All right, so now how do we connect this? How do we get it to do anything? What is the point, right? So we're going to take this switch, obviously. We're going to null, because we want to close the network. Okay? So we're going to call this color switch. And then we are going to connect an out. So what this out does is creates an output of this container that we can then connect the values from this container to something else. So we're going to come in and just connect this. So even when our switch changes, our output is just taking the values that it's been given. Okay? So if we go out a level, or up a level, and I don't know what's going on with my UI. I think my computer's being a little bit buggy. I'll sort that. I apologize for that. Shouldn't be doing that. But now, as you can see on this container, and I wanted to highlight the difference because we've added this out. We now have an output on our container. So colors does not have that because we didn't add an output, but what do you think is coming? We need an input, right? So the first thing we're going to create is an input, all right? And what this allows us to do, if we go out a level, okay? If we go out a level and connect these two, and again, something's going on. I need to check this out because I don't know why it keeps resetting like this. But all right, let's stay focused. So if we connect the two, now we go inside, and now as you can see, all of the information coming from if I hit auto, if I stop, if I move my slider, now it's all being fed into our color information or our color container. Okay, so I've been able to take all of this information and now bring it into a different container using the out and in chops. Okay, so now we're here at the last part 4. Let's go inside, and we want to add a null chop here, all right, so that we have our values. And then I want to now connect our first texture operator, or top. So this constant top is color. And we want to be able to impact. We want to be able to take our values here and impact the color here. So we're going to add a constant top. We're going to add a null, which you could do by n, and then, or option n. And then we are going to add an out, okay, because we need to be able to see what we're doing. And then we need to go inside of here, and we're going to, okay, so now we're going to go into the resolution. We're going to change that to 1280 by 1080. Now we've added a constant, a null, and an out, but we still can't see anything. So what we need to do is we're going to go up a level, and we need to reference the background top inside of this container. And a very simple way to do that is just by going period backslash out one, no caps, out one, hit enter. And now the output of what's inside is being sent to the container. So we can go up 2 levels, and now we have our color side and we have our UI side. If we hit thing, again, it's acting a little tricky, a little funky. There's a bug somewhere that I need to find, but hopefully you can follow along. Okay. Final thing to do, we're going to go inside of our colors, and we're going to take this null. We're going to go to this, we're going to go to our constant top, and we see these 3 color values. So we have color R, color G, color B, and we're simply going to export the chop, so the entire channel, all right, we're exporting the chop to the constant and not the value. So what that means is when we change values, as you can see, when we hit our auto button, we're telling the TouchDesigner which channel to reference for the values. So when auto selected, we want these channels to be referenced. When it's off, we want these channels to be selected. Okay? And then we can change them. We can move them. Okay. So again, by exporting the chop, we're exporting the entire channel rather than the value. Okay? So we're going to go up a level, and let's go ahead and close this project UI. And if I open the perform as a separate window, as you can see, we've now created a UI. Okay? When we hit auto and turn it off, we can select using our mouse and select our own color values, and then we can hit auto and we can have color values generated for us. Okay, everyone. Thanks for checking out today's tutorial. Please make sure you subscribe. We're building a great community of digital content creators and creators all over. So happy you guys got a chance to check this out today, and make sure you subscribe, make sure you like the video, and I'll see you in the next one.